Hello, beautiful human, and welcome back to the School of Whispers podcast. We are revving up the engines for season 4, and we're starting with the greatest love story of all time. Well, actually, before we get into that, I do share a bit about the heartbreak that I'm going through. So, obviously, I will be getting into that on the show, giving details, but I'm about 5 months into breakup, beginning phases of a divorce. Yeah, if you've been through it, I don't have to say much else. So this episode is for anyone who has ever experienced the excruciating, heart-opening experience of a breakup. If you're currently moving through one, if you're happily single or perhaps looking. And I also think this is for those of us who are currently in a relationship, situationship, marriage, anywhere where you feel completed by a person in love. And that can be romantic love. It could also be platonic. As you'll soon learn, that this story is one of the greatest reminders that we could all ever receive from ancient wisdom. So this is the love story of the infinite, all-powerful, all-pervasive Hindu deities Shiva and Shakti. Two archetypes, characters who represent a universal experience. So I'm so glad you're here. I'm so excited to get into this one. And if you have the time between now or the end of the episode and would like to support this podcast, leave your review. That's the best thing you can do for this show to grow. Share with a friend and make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss an episode. Welcome to the School of Whispers podcast. This is your host, Stephanie. I'm a licensed acupuncture physician and herbalist with a background in psychology, health sciences, and exercise physiology. Within my own spiritual awakening, I found myself learning pivotal lessons when I got myself to be in silence. Within that silence, the whispers came through. This is my sacred space of vulnerable storytelling where my guests and I share about the magic that comes from a life of following these whispers. I'm grateful you made it here, and I hope this show inspires you to live a life of following your own whispers. Let's get into the show. Hello and welcome back to the show. Welcome to season 4. By the way, I'm sitting outside underneath a tiki hut and the wind is blowing in and out and the palm fronds are rustling, so you get to hear the whole vibe with me. So it's been almost 2 months since the last podcast, and what a 2 months it's been. I feel like not much has happened, but also so much has happened as well. I feel like my external world is pretty much the same. Living at home with my mama and brothers and stepdad, kitties, dogs, and sitting in the same spot I did to record my last episode. And then working, but it's just all different. It's all different now. I've been definitely still, I don't, if you're new to the show or if you haven't listened to the last episode of season 3, I shared that I am going through some major fucking heartbreak. For like a quick little recap, I last November left my husband and November 1st and moved in with my mom, and my ex moved back to New Zealand, and I've been sitting here going between it's unfolding all as it should and ouch, this hurts, and oh my god, what the fuck is all of this? Man, I mean, if anyone who's listening has been through heartbreak, especially divorce, a marriage. With marriage, for me, what it felt like was I had my whole future just laid out before me, which was such an illusion, because the future is never ever going to be as we think. And if that's how it went for you, then that's great. That's awesome. Good for you. Because that is the complete opposite of how it's been for me. I had this, it's just been earth shattering. And I have been thinking about this a lot too, of the whole process of losing what feels like everything that I really held close to myself in my life, other than my career. Everything else is just gone. And in terms of who I thought I was, where my life will be going, who I thought was my people that I would walk this life with indefinitely. I mean, I used to look at my husband and think, or my ex-husband, and think a lifetime would never be enough. I had this fear that I would lose him too soon. And little did I know that that would become my reality. Without getting too deep into it, sorry, I lost my voice a week ago, and it's still just not quite there. I think it's been over a week. Anyways, my ex started drinking about 2.5 years ago these drinks called Feel Free that have kratom and kava in it, and the kratom component is highly addictive. And the rest is history. Addiction completely engulfed the two of us in a lot of ways. And I've touched on this without being in a sort of roundabout sort of way last season. But on one hand, I could see this as I lost my husband to addiction. So that's a very it happened to me sort of mindset, which I definitely will fall into when the emotions grow high. And to look at it from the aspect of not even it happened for me, but it happened as me. This breakup, this earth-shattering end to my marriage, allowed me to take time to fill in all the empty spaces where I wasn't loving myself. It was actually that whisper from my heart that I put my love for him over my love for myself that helped me realize that this ain't it. This life that I was living it's not for me. And so looking back, I see how I was a C. I was an incomplete circle. And I don't want to speak for my ex, but I would say he was a C as well. We were both just these incomplete people who were conscious and aware and working on ourselves in so many ways, but there are just so many blind spots. And when I met him and when we came together, it was like, oh my gosh, this beautiful completion. I felt like my life went from black and white to technicolor. I went from not knowing what I really wanted or who I was to this sensation of completion. And there is such a beauty in that kind of love story, truly. I mean, there was not a dry tear at our wedding. There was the love between us was so romantic and beautiful, and the story is so beautiful. But as I've come to learn is I'm not meant to be completed by another soul. And I wasn't even fully aware of how much I relied on that other C to complete me as a full circle, right? I hope the C reference is landing for you. But I'm not meant for that. I meant to complete myself through myself. And I wasn't even aware, though. That's the thing. Like, I was so in all of the self-work and all of the spirituality for especially the past 3 or 4 years, that I really just wasn't even aware of my blind spots and my empty spaces. So it just had to happen this way. And so, rather than tell you about my love story, I'm going to tell you about the greatest love story of all time. It's a love story that applies to me. It applies to you if you choose it. It applies to any of us if we choose it. So to quickly tell you how I came across this, I was on YouTube and I saw I saw this YouTube video, which I will link in the show notes, because it's visually just, it's all made by AI, but it's so fun to watch. Whoever created it did such a beautiful job, and what it was named was the greatest love story of all time, of Shiva and Shakti. I've listened to it twice now, and gosh, the first time was such a boom, oh moment. I'm in this really special time in my life. Once March 1st hit, I started to reach the end of my Saturn return. And if you're familiar with Saturn return, or if you're unfamiliar rather with Saturn return, it's a time in life where it's about a 2 to 3 year period. I have a whole podcast on it, so I won't get too far into it. But it's a period of time where you have to look at what you came here for and figure out, am I learning the lessons that are going to evolve me as a soul? Because we didn't come here for easy. We came here for evolution. We came here for this epic lifetime of this love story of Shiva and Shakti. And Shiva is pure consciousness and Shakti is pure energy. So I want you to keep that in the back of your head this whole time, okay? Shiva is pure consciousness, Shakti is pure energy. But as I am leaving this period of Saturn, as well as I believe I'm leaving this other period where it's like a very shadowy influence of energy in my life for the past 15 years. When my astrologer looked at my chart, he said, the past 15 years have been pretty heavy, haven't they? And I said, yes, so heavy. And he goes, well, you're about to leave that and you're enter your Jupiter. So the previous planet I was in is all about illusion and shadows and heaviness and pressure. Saturn is all about pressure. You're in this pressure cooker, and you either come out as a diamond or you come out completely resisting. I think it's a part of me doesn't believe that it's possible to not learn the lessons of Saturn return, because as I've gone through it, I've felt like I've had no choice but to go to tackle it in the way that I have. But I realized that there's another version of me across time and space who didn't have this sort of strength that I've cultivated and really just embodied throughout all of it. So within this really special month of March, I've felt like the veil has lifted in a lot of ways, and things are making more sense than ever. So when I watched this video, it was like this big, oh shit, this is why I'm here. So without further ado, from the wisdom of the Vedas, thank you to the Hindu elders and ancestors for sharing this story throughout time and space and generations for me to share with you. So before there was the form, there was shunya, the void. And it was all stillness. There was no darkness. There was no light. There was no time. There was no space. And within this stillness, the ego, which is the awareness of self, the individual, began to develop. And from this awakening of the ego came Parabrahman, the supreme universe. That's the name for the supreme universe. So because of the awareness of the ego, or rather the development, the separation of the ego, the supreme universe became aware of itself, and it longed deeply to understand its own nature and to witness itself. So the supreme universe split itself into two primal forces: Shiva, pure consciousness, and Shakti, boundless energy. There are three main central deities in Hinduism. There is Shiva, as I mentioned. Shiva also represents complete liberation and chaos. There's Brahma, who represents the god of creation. And then there's Vishnu, who is the sort of I would say the preserver of harmony within the universe, who comes to earth again and again to restore balance and to put people in their place. I have this book that I've been reading. I have a patient, or a former patient, who was moving to Taiwan, and she insisted that I take this book. And it's dense. It's incredible. And it shows how each deity within Hinduism specifically matches different pieces of the brain. I'm not going to get into that so much, but I want to mention it because, again, it's this representation. I know that there's some people out there going to be like, why is Stephanie talking about deities? There's one God. I don't fucking know. There's one God in my heart. There's one God in my life, but there's also going to be different expressions of God within life. And these expressions were created by humankind. And humankind is just this amalgamation of all the things, different fingers of the same palm. And it's just so fascinating to me how these deities are connected to, and if you look at the symbols of the deities, I'll have to post it on my story on Instagram sometime for you guys, because the symbols of these deities match what these structures in the brain are. So just keep all that in mind. So back to it. Lord Brahma, the god of creation, asked Shakti to help him create the form, which is this dimension we live in. And probably other dimensions, but let's stick with Earth, huh? So Shiva agreed to this separation, and Brahma and Shakti got down to business. The thing is once creation was completed, Shakti realized she couldn't return to her divine state. I would say she became of this realm in a lot of ways. And so in order to return, she would have to take form herself to fulfill her karma. So now, as you see, I'm going to get into this story here. In a lot of ways, Shakti, if you haven't realized, represents feminine energy, and Shiva represents masculine energy. So to fulfill her karma, Shakti incarnated into Sati. Sati was the favorite daughter of the king Daksha, who was created by Brahma to be this representation of maintaining cosmic order, kind of almost like the supreme human king. And his role was to enforce codes of conduct for all of humanity. So as Sati's growing up, she dreams of this ascetic yogi. So an ascetic yogi, the image that's pretty typical is this guy who's covered himself in ash. So he's just all gray, ashy color and has long dreads, who just made a vow to let go of all worldly objects and desires. So she's seeing this guy in her dreams as she's daydreaming all the time. He's sitting there in this meditation, and she, over her life, starts to build this desire to meet this mysterious, pervasive form in her life. And over time, this desire turned into devotion. When I first heard that, I felt this stirring within me. I haven't necessarily daydreamed or dreamed about a yogi meditating, anything like that, but I've had these, and I'm sure you have, these heart call dreams and daydreams. For one of them for me has always been Costa Rica. I have no idea why Costa Rica. I can give you all the explanations that my mind has made up, but truly, I don't fully know what's there waiting for me and when and how I'm going to get there. But as I further developed and evolved into this form I'm in now, it has truly gone from a desire to a devotion of, okay, my heart's calling me there, then we're going to day listen to that call and take the next step, listen to the next call, all the next steps that will bring me to that place, bring me to whatever it is that Costa Rica represents for me, whatever it is that heart call has there waiting. So one day, Sati and her buddies, her crew, went over to the Himalayas. And when she was there, this bull that was just wild looking, just started charging at her. And her people tried to fight him off. He just tossed them aside like rag dolls, and she shut her eyes and stood there ready to die. And in that moment, the bull stopped and looked at her with recognition and transformed into Nandi, who is a devotee of Lord Shiva. Nandi, without getting much into it, is one of those deities that in my textbook, when I was just looking through it on the connecting the deities to the brain structures, is one of those. He's one of those structures. I think maybe the hippocampus, but I'm not sure. And he was just like, oh shit, it's the Divine Mother. I'm so sorry I didn't recognize you. Come with me. I'm going to take you to the peak of the mountain to go see Lord Shiva. And she was like, Lord, what? The mother? Lord Shiva? Like, what? Divine, why'd you call me this? And just kind of left it at that. And she just followed him. And pretty soon, as they're climbing up this mountain, she saw that it was teeming with these horrific, dark beasts. And she was like, Nandi, why are you taking me here? There's all these scary creatures. And he goes, well, hold on, look around. And she looked around. She saw, there was these scary dark beasts and creatures around, but she also saw all of these beautiful divine beings in meditation. And he says, they're both here. Shiva is all loving and all accepting. If your heart is pure, it does not matter what you look like. If your devotion is sincere, then you are welcome here on Shiva's mountain. So when she was taken to Shiva at the peak and she saw him meditating, she was like, oh shit, this man is covered in ash. He's got dreads. He looks exactly and feels exactly like the man from my dreams. And in seeing him, she remembered who she truly was, and she understood everything. She was so excited. She didn't even wake him up out of meditation. She ran to her father to tell him, like, I found my soulmate. And he was so excited for her. He was about to throw this whole convention of her finding her husband. And he probably was like, great, I can save a little bit of money. And he asked her to draw who this soulmate was. And as she drew this ascetic yogi, the epitome of order and discipline, was furious to see that the man she was drawing, I guess he could feel the energy of just absolute chaos and renunciation of this man. And I imagine that he was probably like, no, sweetheart, this is Lord Shiva. This is a nonconformist, free spirit who's renounced all worldly pleasures, who allows the company of the lowest beings, who dances freely to his own drum. My love, this is not the husband for you. Let's go back to our regular programming, and I will choose the right man who matches me, ordering and discipline, not chaos and freedom. And Sati and him got into it, and she eventually was just like, you're not listening. You're refusing to see and to listen. I renounce all of this stuff. If I can't be with my soulmate, then I'm out. Peace. And she renounced the palace and returned to the mountain and returned to Shiva. Mind you, she left her dad, everything she's ever known, and Shiva's still asleep, or not asleep. He's still in deep, deep meditation. He has, like, they haven't even talked yet. And she grew nervous that he wouldn't recognize her when he awoke. So she committed herself to embodying her truest form. She went hard and she committed herself to severe austerities and penances. What that basically means is she went into deep meditation, gradually gave up food, and sustained herself, as they say, with a single betel leaf. So the moment they mentioned a betel leaf, I'm like, huh? What is this leaf that this incarnated goddess chose to ingest every day as she devoted herself to Shiva and also returning to remembering her true self, embodying rather her true self. If you don't know me, I'm an herbalist, and like an herbalist hears that shit and does a deep dive. And so I did. And so we're going to pause on this love story, and I'm going to tell you about the betel leaf because it's not only extremely medicinal, but there's all of this lore behind it. And it has this really special quality of being used in Asia in ritual, particularly all about communion with other humans. So betel leaf is a digestive aid, an antibacterial cleanser, and it enhances flavor and promotes social connections. Today, it's a huge symbol for romantic gestures, which that's a whole other rabbit hole I will touch on. But first, let's talk about the physical plant itself. So it's a vine, and vines are all about connection. It has this behavior of climbing, and it's described as like having this exceptional ability to climb up and up to 10 meters. It also has a distinct aroma and heart shape. So to pause there, because a couple of sources were like, oh, because of its heart shape, it's associated with romantic gestures. And I'm sitting there like, you're telling me that the shape of the heart, that the two humps with the together with the little pointed edge at the end, that originates from the Vedas, like from Hinduism. It just didn't fully seem right to me. And then I'm looking into what like all about the symbol of the heart, that heart symbol. And it sort of is pervasive throughout all cultures. There's the ivy, there's all these other plants that have these heart shapes that are used as a representation of union and love. And it's so I'm wondering, is this a collective consciousness sort of shape? Yes and no. I realized through my research that this symbol of the heart, these plants don't represent romantic or union or romance and union and love because of the shape. I'm thinking it's because of their unique alkaloids and just full on essence that they bring, whether it's the betel leaf or ivy or any other heart-shaped plants. They've just been constantly associated with connection, human connection, and opening oneself to another. So it's because of that shape of the leaf has turned into the heart and is associated with love. I hope you're picking up what I'm putting down there. I just thought that was really interesting. So chewing the betel leaf it's a customary practice in India. It's known as pan. It's mixed with other herbs such as slaked lime, areca nut, and other spices and sweets. And it's eaten for its invigorating properties. And it's used at parties, festivals, weddings, in pujas, which is a ceremony in devotion to a deity in Hinduism. They specifically look for a leaf that is that perfect deep green heart shape. Can't have any sort of cosmetic wear and tear to be put on an altar. So beyond its physiological benefits, let's talk about its role in social rituals. In Vietnam, an offering of betel leaves and Eureka nut is a customary gesture to initiate conversation and build relationships. So basically, if someone hands you this blend or this leaf, it's them saying, like, hi, I want to open my heart to you, and I'd like you to open your heart to me. And there's this customary saying that says the beetle begins the conversation. Similarly, in India, it is a gesture of respect and hospitality and fosters deep social bonds. So to touch on the physiological effects a little bit more, its main domains are in oral health, respiratory disorders, and wound healing. It's known to increase heart rate, blood pressure, and body temperature. So this is not for somebody who's already really robust. If we're going to talk about it from a medicinal quality, it's for somebody who is very deficient. So I can imagine that if you are fasting, this would be a great ally. I found a research paper that actually looks at an EEG of somebody who is ingesting betel leaf, and it's cool. Like the heart rate lifts, and it suggests this state of arousal. And so speaking of arousal, the betel vine itself represents the coiling of the Kundalini serpent, that sexual divine energy that wraps up our spine and enables us to have some pretty amazing downloads, upgrades, whatever you want to call it, just divine connection. And so in tantric rituals, betel leaf is often used as an offering and as a enhancer of connection with the divine. If you're not too familiar with tantra, if you hear that word you go, oh yeah, sex stuff, there's so much more. There's so much more to tantra than I think the West will give credit to. It's basically the practice of accepting the sensation, the stimulation, the somatic input of all things, and allowing it to wash over you. And through that process, I've come to find, is this heightened, aroused state that isn't yes, it has to do with our sexual energy, has to do with our kundalini, but it doesn't necessarily have to do with that. It has to do with when you can be a witness of somatic input and embrace it, to observe it and to love it, you open yourself up to this whole new level of experience. But yeah, betel leaf apparently is also an aphrodisiac. So that is my take. That is my touch on the betel leaf that Sati was eating within devotion. And within this whole experience of devotion, Shiva eventually wakes up. And the two of them are reunited in this perfect union. Meanwhile, on the other side, away from the mountains, King Daksha, is having an absolute hissy fit. And he is furious. His daughter chose a filthy yogi over him. So while he's losing his shit, Lord Brahma, Lord of Creation, comes around and he tells him to get over yourself, because this is a divine union of Shiva and Shakti, and it is essential to the harmony of the entire universe. He's basically like, Daksha, this is so much greater than you. Get over yourself and let it happen. So Daksha sends a letter to Sati and is like, yeah, okay, you can marry him. I give you my blessing. And so this marriage ceremony is known amongst the Hindus as Mahashivratri, and it's the marriage of Shiva and Shakti. So they get married, everyone's invited, and then they return back to the Himalayas, back to Shiva's peak at the mountain, and they experience marital bliss. Shiva is such a babe, Sati is such a beautiful being, and Shiva really settles into marriage life. He's no longer this ascetic yogi. He's really does a good job at embodying the husband. And Sati, she just attains everything she's ever longed for, and Shiva's world just becomes her. And he shows her the mystery of the inner world, and together they become one. I thought that was I really just want to repeat that again and let you take what you want from it. That within this marital bliss, Shiva takes Sati into his arms and he shows her the mysteries of the inner world. And together they become one. If you have any experience with a stubborn father who's all about discipline, you wouldn't be surprised to hear that King Daksha still could not get over himself. So he organized a yajna, a sacrificial rite or performance of duty to deity. So he invited everybody in the cosmic universe, everybody on the earthly planes to come to this yajna, except for Sati and Shiva. And Sati sees these sadhus, sadhu is a teacher, just heading down over to Daksha's kingdom for this yajna. And she's like, what? That's kind of weird. Why weren't we invited? I mean, I guess, family doesn't really need an invite. So she decides, I'm going to go. And Shiva's like, all right, well, I'm going to stay. I don't really think going is the best idea. But she was insistent that she would go. So he gave her his bodyguards and he warned her, keep your composure at any insults that your father might be hurling. And she's like, no, this is my dad. Like, he's not going to do that. Okay. So she heads over to home, or her old home, and she becomes wild, inconsolable with rage when she saw a grotesque caricature of Shiva waiting at the gate. It was so absurd looking that the others that were there, they just couldn't help but laugh and giggle at it. She stormed over to Daksha and she ordered him to take that shit down right now. And Daksha was like, no, you need to see this for yourself. This is who Shiva really is. He may have fooled you and the rest of the world into thinking he's this pious yogi covered in ash. Oh, look at me with my dreads. Like, I think I know shit. But this fool here, pointing to the statue, is who he really is. And the insults just keep on coming. And Sati's heart breaks. The insults are unbearable to her. So she takes one look at Daksha, she points her finger at him and goes, since you gave me this body, I no longer want to be associated with it. Rather than throwing herself on the floor and screaming and crying, no, this is the incarnated goddess of Shakti, right? She's remembered who she is to a certain degree. And she went into this deep meditative state. She channeled her inner fire and her body just poof. Erupted into flames, and Shakti, the supreme goddess, left her body and Sati was no more. Everyone who witnessed this was like, oh shit. And they realized no one can save us from Shiva's wrath. And long story short, when he realized that his beloved wife died, his rage was incomparable, absolutely insane, pulling out his hair in grief. And from this grief came two new forms who were the darkest and the baddest of all the dark and baddies out there living on his mountain. And he said, head over to Daksha, bitches. We're going to teach him a fucking lesson. And so there was this big battle, and Daksha tried to escape like a coward. And one of these forms of Shiva tracked him down and beheaded him. So Daksha's no more. Battle's over. And Shiva searches amongst the dead from the battle to find Sati's body. He finds her at a funeral pyre, her body half burned, and with the most heartbreaking tenderness, he gathered her half-burned body and held her close to his heart as grief and rage consumed him. He carried her body, wandering through the wilderness all around the world, clutching Sati so close to his heart. He was inconsolable, and his friends tried to awaken him with chanting, with everything they could, but no one could reach him in this deep pit of grief and despair. So after a certain point, Brahma and Vishnu, they're like, we have to get involved. And so they divided Sati's body in 51 pieces across the globe. And so these 51 pieces are known as sacred points of energy. And when her last piece was laid to rest, Shiva finally broke out of his delirium, and he sat down along a sacred river, allowing the waters to wash over him and hold him. He decided to go back into his meditation, and I'd say he had a bit of a life review. He sat back and he witnessed what had just occurred and realized that both he and Shakti failed to fulfill what they came here for. They got caught up in the illusion, in the story. They succumbed to pride, rage, grief, shame, guilt, a whole spectrum of human emotions. Kind of hard not to sometimes, right? And he just longed to return to his spiritual form to reunite with Shakti. And so he did. He went back to the mountain and re-entered his deep meditation until his soul once again merged with Shakti. 306 million years later, chaos ensued, and dark forces grew stronger, tipping the scales away from harmony and towards chaos. There was this dark demon dude, and there's this whole, within everything, there's like a whole side quest, side story with all of these intricate characters, but I'm not going to get into it. But basically this dark demon dude took over, and he had a boon, which is basically a gift from the gods that he could only be defeated by one soul, and that soul would be the son of Shiva and Shakti. But because Shakti had become formless and Shiva was in deep meditation, they were both just like, we can't do that shit again. That was too hard. Then this demon dude reigned supreme. The Devas prayed to Shakti, please, my girl, please be reborn. And so she eventually was like, okay, guys, okay, let's try this one again. And she became reborn as Parvati. So mind you, Shakti is getting to reincarnate with all the lessons and all the karma that was fulfilled and learned by Sati. And she learned a lot of lessons over those 306 million years. I'll tell you that, because Parvati, when she was born, just had this glowing, pure essence to her. She was born as a Ma, which is like a saint. And she was also born to a king and a queen. So, of course, she was a princess. I was actually listening to this really great podcast of this man from India talking about money and abundance. And he was saying that, notice how in all the Hindu stories, everyone's like a king or a queen or a princess or somebody who's really wealthy. And the way he put it was, when you are within an abundance consciousness, you have the space to allow this greater story to unfold. You're not in survival mode. You're in this place of abundance. And so you can share your lessons and really fulfill a lot of karmas within it. And I thought that was pretty fucking cool. Like, what a great mindset to have, that you really want to let this story be epic. You want to fulfill these karmas and allow the abundance to unfold in your life. I digress. Parvati's haunted by these dreams of this ascetic, and he's meditating in these snow-capped peaks, and she goes to a temple and she finds a mentor. Did not write down his name, I'm sorry. But this mentor was in fact another being who was sent by the gods, by the devas, to be incarnated specifically to help Parvati remember who she really was. So he taught her how to pierce the veil of Maya. Maya is the illusion. And she saw once again that ascetic, and she realized, this was Lord Shiva, and I am Shakti reborn. Parvati heads out to the Himalayas, and she once again meets with Nandi, who immediately recognizes her. And she went inside to the highest peak, and she saw Shiva in deep meditation. He remained, quote unquote, asleep, and once again she stayed close to him, devoted and filled with love. Now let's remember, 306 million years ago, Shiva went to this meditation with the intention to reunite with Shakti, but also with the intention of like, I don't want to go through that shit again. Almost like a shame of his humanity. And so boyfriend wasn't waking up. And so once again, the gods got involved and they recruited Kamadeva, who is basically the Hindu Cupid, the god of love, who is just beautiful and had this bow and arrow. And they gave him the task of shooting Shiva with a flower-tipped arrow of desire to wake him up. Poor Kamadeva was like, fuck, I have to wake him up and face his wrath of being awoken from this bliss connection with Shakti. Like, oh, okay, guess I'll do it. So he shot it. Shiva woke up and he instantly vaporized Kamadeva with his third eye. Kamadeva's out of the picture. So Shiva sees Parvati sitting there and instantly recognized her and remembered his past. And the arrow did its trick because his heart stirred. But then, having had attained this mastery over his mind and emotions, Shiva instantly quelled this heart stirring. He remembered the chaos, the pain of Sati's death. And he turned to Parvati and said, Mama, I honor you, but I have renounced all worldly attachments. See ya. And retreated back to his meditation. Parvati was pretty torn up, and she felt like this purpose that she had, and like, I gotta find my man, I gotta be there when he wakes up, just completely slipped away. So she went back to her mentor, this wise sage, and he told her, hey, don't worry. If you can't win Shiva through love, then you can surely reach him through devotion. He told her to dedicate herself to penance, and her sincerity would surely melt Shiva's heart. So she committed herself to the severe austerities, just as she did back in her past life as Sati, and she meditated through the most severe circumstances, focusing her mind and her heart solely to Shiva. Shiva eventually became aware of what Parvati was up to, and he was really moved by the fact that she wasn't doing this devotion out of this promise of like, okay, I'll be his wife or I'll be his lover. He'll wake up and he'll want me. She was just in devotion as a seeker. And instead of being like, all right, she earned it. No. Heartthrob Shiva over here gave Parvati extra challenges to see if she carried the same ego that had clouded Sati in her past life. So he disguised himself as a wandering yogi, this crazy old guy, and he got in her face and started insulting Shiva, just as Daksha had done. But Parvati didn't lose her cool. She remained steadfast and open-hearted. And love of this devotion proved stronger than the bonds of illusion and doubt. And voila, they were reunited into perfect harmony, and their marriage was a restoration of consciousness and energy. So I want to ask you, if throughout this whole story, if you forgot what Shiva and Shakti represented and you got just sucked into the characters, the incarnations, especially if you watch this YouTube video, they're total hotties, Shiva and Shakti, in their incarnated forms. And the reason I ask that is because how many times have you walked through this lifetime and you've gotten completely caught up in your humanoid form or your lover's form? It's so damn easy. And look what happened when Shiva and Shakti, pure consciousness and boundless energy, forgot who they really were and why they came here. They got caught up in the illusion and in the story. And so they had to go back and reincarnate all over again so they can get there. And there's nothing wrong with that, because that is the evolution. That is the story that makes this lesson worthwhile. This moved me a lot as well, because as a little girl, I have said so many times, I just wanted to go up to the highest peak and fuck off from the rest of the world and reunite with God. And here's Sati and here's Parvati reuniting with Shiva, connecting with their quote unquote other half to return to this consciousness. This whole story, this whole love story is not about the story of husband and wife, man and woman. It is about the story of your consciousness, my consciousness, reuniting with pure energy, our pure Shakti Kundalini, so that we can reconnect with that true essence that is God, that is the God within. I have forgotten that story, and I've gotten to remember, thank God, in this lifetime. And I often think about this choice a soul makes to be incarnated as a woman, specifically in this masculine driven society with a deep history of brainwashing and annihilating any sort of matriarchal spirituality or structure, and this ostracization of our Shakti, and how the fact that we have portals, wombs within our body where we make the formless into form. We have Shakti within in a way that men could never. And across time and history, this Shakti has been deemed as dark or demonic or laughably weak. I think birth is a great example of this. That the moment men got involved in a practice that historically has been led by, it's a woman-only space, and then this masculine medical system has completely absorbed it into itself and pathologized birth. This moment of ultimate Shakti, a woman in the form, bringing the formless into form through her portal, it's become this moment of fear mongering constantly from before conception, and into making women rely on outside sources to decipher if her body and if her baby is okay. And that's just pregnancy. And then the woman gets strapped down, drugged and sedated and numbed and poked and sliced and treated like she's either a piece of meat or a child who knows nothing about her own body. And we've gotten to a point where it's so deeply indoctrinated that women seek this out. For so many women, this is deemed as the best option. For so many couples, this is the only way. And there is very little space to fully embody one Shakti within that sort of model. And the very idea of doing it completely opposite from that model has been deemed as dangerous and irresponsible and completely unsafe. And then I look at the ostracization of Shakti within myself, how I did yoga and I've done movement practices for years without any access of like my true Shakti, my true Dantian Chi. It's, if anything, traditional yogic practices that have been brought to the West today are all about like a cardiovascular toning workout. I have very rarely connected with a yoga teacher who has encouraged any sort of winding and grinding or accessing of Shakti. It's become this very linear, dry, holy, aesthetic practice. And so when I'm alone and I eventually will, through meditation, access my Shakti, I don't look I don't look holy. I mean, I don't look like the traditional sense of holy. My body will writhe, and sometimes my tongue will stick out and I'll hiss. And with my Catholic upbringing and seeing movies, these movies absolutely terrified me the most, of exorcisms and demons and shit. And so sometimes when I make that connection, even though it's coming from within me, I get scared. And in the past, especially, now I'm much better at embracing, but I've stopped and just literally grabbed my phone or just went back into meditation and just quelled it down. And that actually leads me to the connection of who our buddy Daksha really is. Daksha represented the thinking mind. And as Shiva and Shakti got closer and closer to their divine reunion, the thinking mind, Daksha, order, was like abso-fucking-lutely not, absolutely triggered by the aesthetics of this yogi, who this man looked like, and became obsessed with everything that Shiva wasn't, and wanted to control the situation. And what happened? Daksha got his head cut off, and his daughter ended up killing herself. Basically, suffering ensues when we allow the thinking mind to get in the way of that divine union within. And that's also a sign that you can know that you are on the path. You are getting to that perfect, beautiful union. And he will likely be represented by others outside of you, other forms outside of you, whether that's the big form of society or friends, loved ones, strangers who will mock you or try to scare you or try to control you. Your mind is going to get in the way, and fear and judgment is going to come hollering, asking you to come back down. Don't do this to us. And just as Shiva asked of Sati, don't get caught up in that. Don't let that carry you away, and don't get upset about being upset within this union. Observe it. You came down here to witness yourself. We came down here to witness each other, witness ourselves. Embrace that shit. Embrace that fear. Embrace that ego and that need for order. And it's like, I know. We'll give you little bits and pieces of order, but right now we're going to blast the fuck off and reconnect. And there are so many ways to do that. Connecting with another being is such an epic and pretty intensively quick way to get there. I mean, lover meets lover, lovers come together and make each other orgasm. Boom, that's God right there. That actually brings me back to the symbol of love, the symbol of the heart, right? How those two little humps come together and they come that little pointed end. The two become one. But as it was touched on with Parvati's devotion, sometimes love ain't enough. I stole that line from my friend Troy. He told me he wants to write a book called Love Ain't Enough. Because love, yes, is everything and everywhere. But through my own story of heartbreak, that especially I've learned over the past 4 to 5 months, I've learned that just because I love someone deeply and currently still do, it doesn't mean that that's my entire life and drive and the reason that I'm here, and just throwing out every dream or hope for myself that's outside of that relationship. It's so easy to grow addicted to the company of a lover because of that cocktail of hormones, that romantic love and desire and intimacy and the ecstasy of orgasms that come through when two bodies or two beings become one. And it's that two becoming one is this interplay of cosmic divine connection. And it's like, yes, finally, I found you. You are my connection to God. But that's addiction. Anything that you rely on to feel a connection to God, back to that whole formless witnessing state, appreciating all loving state, then that's an addiction. And I was in that addiction. And for me, the remedy to that has been devotion to reconnecting, well, realizing it, and then being devoted to reconnecting to my God within, to my Shiva, my consciousness. Which is, I've found to be a connection with my Dharma, the reason why I'm here. And right now what really resonates to be my Dharma is loving everyone, serving everyone, and remembering God. I'm on this really great path. I get to be on this path of finding that union without another soul, without another person around. Of just me, myself, and I, through practices of Tantra, through practices of accepting all that there is. And mind you, I am not living every day, not getting sucked into the illusion. It was so funny. I had this altercation with a family member that I was like, okay, we gotta sort this out. And I'm like preparing myself for it. And I'm just pouring love into my heart and out of my heart for them and thinking I'm not going to get sucked into the illusion. And when we got on the phone together and they started talking over me and I was like, no, fuck that. Fuck the illusion. This is personal. This is real. And then when I hung up, I was like, oh, that didn't go as I planned. And just allowing Daksha to be Daksha and just not getting upset about it. And playing the game, but not getting sucked into the Maya, the illusion. As I think it's done, one of the Dons that are out there, one of the Toltec wisdom keepers, he says, once we wake up, we get to walk in around and we huff and we puff and we pretend like it all matters. We get to choose to be a part of it. And I feel like at this point, I'm just repeating myself from quite a few of the episodes that I've recorded from last season. This is just a season of life that I am deep within. So if you're sick of hearing me repeat myself, then maybe you should find another podcast. But if you are here for it, thank you for being here. This is going to be an interesting season. I have no idea what's to come, and I am grateful that you're along the ride with me. If you have any suggestion on topics, open to it. I'm brainstorming a couple of topics, so keep an eye on my Instagram stories. So I'll bring that up probably the next couple of weeks. It's good to be back. Sending you my love, and I'll feel your energy the next time I'm behind this mic.